Hello there. Today I'm going to talk to you about criticism, because quite frankly it's one of the most painful aspects of our relationships. What is criticism exactly? Criticism is to analyze or judge the merits or faults of something or someone. Negative criticism, which is what we will be focusing on in this episode, is when we critique something that we disapprove of based on the faults or mistakes that we perceive in it. There's a lot of gray area with regards to criticism, most especially because of the idea of constructive criticism. I'm going to sort through all of this confusion for you very simply. Constructive criticism doesn't exist. Just do away with the concept entirely. And I want you to think of this in terms of feedback. And feedback, which is sharing your opinion with someone, is really going to fit into two distinct camps. The first camp is criticism, you already know about that one. The second is sharing your opinion, your experience, your perspective. Criticism challenges our sense of value, and when our sense of value is threatened, a part of our brain that is cued into social survival is triggered. Criticism can literally feel like a threat to your survival, but we need feedback. Our growth and awareness is dependent on it. Giving criticism is much different than sharing your honest perspective, most especially because when you're in an attitude of criticism, there is absolutely no care or regard for the person who is on the receiving end of that information. In other words, there's no regard for whether the person on the other side of that criticism is in fact receptive. Criticism is often done while in a state of reactivity. When we're in a state of reactivity, it means we're in a state of defense. It means we feel threatened in some way. You will find that criticism has almost nothing to do with the person receiving the criticism. It has almost everything to do with the person who is giving the criticism. They're trying to get one of their needs met. Anytime we provide feedback with the goal of getting someone to better meet our needs, rather than being responsive to theirs, it is unlikely to produce a desired outcome and will most likely produce the undesired outcome. For example, a dance teacher might critique a performance of a young dancer with the intention of helping the dancer to excel. In this scenario, the opinion could be said to be more helpful than harmful. If, however, the dance teacher critiques a performance of a young dancer with the intention of preventing herself from embarrassment and maintaining her own prestige by making the young dancer collect the flaws in her routine, the criticism could be said to be more harmful than beneficial. There is a caveat that I must insert here. I'm not saying to you that you should absolutely never offer your perspective or opinion unless the other person is receptive and wanting it, or unless it is a selfless motive behind you asserting that opinion. In fact, if you're the boss of a major company, you absolutely can't take this approach with your employees. But we should be aware enough that we are acting in our own best interests, that we can then make a conscious decision about whether or not sharing our opinion is in fact in alignment with the highest good in the scenario we find ourselves in. And if it is, how to deliver this opinion that is in our own best interests and is definitely not solicited. Intention is everything when it comes to sharing our perspective or criticism. We have to be willing to ask ourselves why we feel the need to share that information. Be really honest with ourselves about the answer. Even if we have good intentions for sharing our perspective, we have to be honest with ourselves about whether that perspective is in fact helping them or doing more harm than it is good. You all have heard the saying, good intentions pave the road to hell. When it comes to criticism, it's mostly true. I can help you understand the key difference energetically between criticism and sharing your honest perspective in this way. Criticism seeks to push something away from someone. This is why it feels so resistant in nature. In the previous scenario, the dance teacher was trying to use that criticism to push away the potential that she would be humiliated or embarrassed by her dancer. The sharing of your honest perspective is done in a way where the giving of that perspective is unattached to what you want or don't want. It's quite literally just putting a perspective out on the table as an offering. an offering that most often was first invited. To have a perspective at all, you must judge. I hate to burst your bubble, but to call a clock is to judge it. You're basically limiting its potential energy to that of a clock. Now, you might be rolling your eyes right now, but it's still a judgment. So which judgments are the ones that we're supposed to be helping ourselves to get over, and which ones are okay to hold on to? A judgment is like any basic tool. It can help you in certain scenarios and also harm you in certain scenarios. Now, an opinion is a judgment. You can't have an opinion without having judged. So good luck trying to live on this planet without an opinion, because I've never met anybody who is capable of that feat. Many people in the spiritual field will tell you to not judge, stop judging. I don't think this is particularly practical, because I've never met somebody who's capable of doing that. But what we can do is to notice and change the judgments that are causing us pain, which are the ones that seek to push something away from us, as well as developing a flexibility in our perspective. What we have to understand about criticism, genuine criticism, is that the person who is judging is caused as much pain by doing so as the person who is judged. The reason is that in giving a criticism, you have to match the frequency of that criticism. So both the person who is being criticized and the criticizer are matching vibration to the criticism itself, and thus holding themselves in a sort of vibrational chokehold. This is what we do when we try to push anything away in a universe that is based on the law of attraction. Anything we push away, we just make ourselves more of a match to, because we include it in our vibration. This is the main reason why people who believe so firmly in the law of attraction and in the idea that mind creates reality would tell you, don't ever criticize someone. Never look at a negative aspect of them and put your attention on it for long. Or if you do, use it to direct your focus instead in the opposite direction, towards what is wanted or preferred. Many spiritual teachers will tell you something along the lines of, if you don't have something nice to say, don't say anything at all. In my opinion, this is neither practical or useful, and it puts a muzzle on a part of you that very much so needs your attention and care. Becoming aware of your own judgments opens the door for growth, and sharing your honest opinion or experience, even if that opinion or experience is not positive, provides others for the opportunity for growth. The variable is our conscious awareness of our judgments. It's not really going to matter whether you are able to stop judging completely. I've never met somebody who can. But the difference between someone who suffers as a result of their judgments and someone who does not is that the person who doesn't suffer is aware of their judgments and uses that awareness of their judgments to evolve. People who struggle chronically with being criticized have a very difficult time with self-worth and self-love. The universe is essentially mirroring back to them the highly self-critical nature of their own minds and hearts. For this very reason, if you struggle with being criticized often, I want you to watch my YouTube videos titled How to Develop Self-Worth and Self-Love, the Great Shortcut to Enlightenment. You could also read the book I wrote titled Shadows Before Dawn, Finding the Light of Self-Love Through Your Darkest Times. People who chronically criticize, and yes, we all know who we are, we might as well just admit it, we struggle with chronic fear. We are only critical of something when we are afraid we will be affected by something. Criticism is a cry for help in disguise. It is a cry for help that says the following: I feel powerless to others, and so I can't trust myself to make myself feel good, and especially to feel emotionally safe. And so I need you to correct this thing that is going to cause me pain so I don't have to feel pain. If we have the tendency to criticize, we have to ask ourselves two questions. The first is, what am I so afraid of? The second is, what do I want to have happen as a result of this criticism? We would not even give criticism in the first place if we didn't have something in mind that we would prefer. So what you'll find is that criticism is in fact a manipulation tactic to get what it is that we think that we need. We're going the roundabout way instead of the shortcut. So what we need to do is to learn to ask for what we need directly, instead of try to criticize people to get them to give us the need which we are needing. For this reason, it's a good idea to watch my video on YouTube titled Meet Your Needs. Also, many of us who criticize are prone to going into states of denial about the way we're actually feeling and thinking and the things we actually want. We're prone to justification. For this reason, we miss the opportunity to see that often there is a core belief that is resting below the judgments that we make about others. So what we need to do is to practice taking that judgment and finding the core belief that exists and operates underneath it. For this reason, I want you to watch my YouTube video titled How to Find a Core Belief. When we have the tendency to criticize because we are trying to get a need met, we mask our criticism under the guise of help. We then get angry when our criticism isn't received well. The idea of constructive criticism has allowed us to do this for years. For example, we might have a need to feel good about ourselves, and so we get that need in a roundabout way by using criticism to devalue someone. And then we can call it helpful, when all it was just us trying to get what we needed by delivering the criticism. Here's another direct example. A mother could criticize her daughter for being fat, not realizing that what she is hoping is that her daughter will start exercising and lose weight so she can feel good about herself as a mother. She could say this is constructive criticism because it's for her daughter's own good, when it is really just her trying to get her need for approval from others met. So be aware of the excuse and mask of constructive criticism. Once you feel as if you've received a green light to deliver your honest perspective, how you do so is of the utmost importance. Because if a person is in a state where they feel as if they have to defend their own value, you can be sure they're not going to be receptive. Most people who find that their perspectives are not well received by others have an issue in that they do not establish rapport with a person before they offer their perspective. There is no hint of actually caring for the other person on the other side of that criticism. It's too harsh. It's too judgmental. It's too hard. Empathy and compassion can be delivered to somebody who you are sharing a negative perspective with. If you're willing to soften your delivery, there are a few great tools for doing this. You could do it by softening your words. For example, you could say you're doing it all wrong, or you could say you may want to consider changing your approach. Another example is you could say, you lost track of all the numbers I needed on this sheet. Or you could say, I noticed there are some numbers missing, can you tell me why? Softening your delivery does wonders for being received. For those of you who feel like a soft delivery is not honest, I beg to differ. It's still honesty. It's just that that honesty is backed by empathy and compassion for the person on the other side. You're not withholding your opinion. You're just making sure to deliver it in a way that is also considerate of them. And let's face it, we want other people to care about us when they deliver a perspective that is unfavorable. So we should quite literally be addressing them the way we would wish to be addressed, keeping in mind, of course, that some people are more sensitive than others. By now, most of you have heard of the technique of changing all of your statements into I statements. You've heard about it because it works. So for example, you are lazy, which is a judgment, could be changed to I feel like you're being lazy. Putting things in an I statement makes it so you have to own your perspective, you have to own your judgment, and you have to own the way you feel most especially. Owning the way we feel and making it about the way we feel and something we think minimizes other people's defenses. Another good tool is to relate to someone when you are giving them an opinion that is less than favorable. You can do this by explaining some situation that makes you relate to the situation they're in. Here's a good way of understanding this. Let's say that what you have to tell somebody is that they're making a mistake. You can also include a story about how you have made the very same mistake. So you're establishing a connection at the same time as delivering that separating judgment. Another technique you can use, which is commonly used in management, is called sandwiching. What you do is you quite literally sandwich a negative appraisal in between two positive appraisals. It does work wonders. Also, whenever you're delivering a perspective, which might cause somebody to feel a certain amount of pain or to feel devalued, one of the best things you can do is to make sure to end on a positive note. This way the person feels like the perspective that you are offering is going to add to their life instead of take away from it. Another good thing to do is to try out your criticism on yourself. Close your eyes and pretend that you are standing in front of someone whose opinion matters to you very much. If you knew that this person's perspective was going to make a serious impact on you, and they had the same opinion that you have right now, but this time about you, how would they word that opinion in a way that you could receive it and not feel like it was a direct affront to your sense of value? How could you word it so that it instead conveyed care for you? Once you find out how you would wish this person to word it to you, you can word your judgment or your perspective like that to the other person. Pay attention to internal criticism. I will tell you that people who criticize others are internal terrorists to themselves. So listen to what the little voice inside your mind is saying to you all day long. Is it harsh and critical and unforgiving? If so, becoming aware of the pain that this internal critique causes you, and consciously offering love and compassion to that critical inner voice, that is in truth a very frightened aspect of you, and altering your internal commentary to be softer and more loving will cause you to become softer and more caring with others. If you're a critical person, chances are you struggle immensely with your own mind. You may feel like you're living with the enemy within. For this reason, I want you to watch my YouTube video titled, Is the Mind Friend or Foe? The next step is to learn to recognize receptivity and invitation from other people. Well, sometimes this is easy because the situation you've walked into with the understanding that critique would be given. But when this isn't the case, make sure that you choose the right time or place. And also beware that aside from someone just flat out telling you that they want your opinion, there are many subtle cues that will tip you off to the receptivity of an individual. But I want you to keep in mind that a lot of people who seem to be open to your criticism or your perspective are in fact just fishing for compliments, and like any other person who doesn't feel like it's right to ask directly for what they need, they have to try to manipulate you to get it. But when in doubt, you need to ask the other person whether they would actually like to receive your perspective, and then honor the answer that they give you. Chances are, if you haven't been given any hints that this person does want your perspective or opinion, the only reason you're wanting to provide it is because you want to meet one of your own needs, or this particular perspective, sharing it, is in your own best interests instead of theirs. Before you share your opinion or your perspective or your experience with anyone, if that experience or perspective is a negative one, I want you to remember the cardinal rule. Seek to understand instead of to assert your own correct opinion. If we've already determined the other person is wrong, we have closed the door on them energetically. The main mistake we make is to assume that we're right about whatever opinion or perspective we're inclined to share. We cannot find a meeting of minds, and we cannot establish connection with someone if we are rigid in our viewpoint to the degree that we are unwilling to understand theirs. Our truths and perspectives are an interpretation, as all perspectives are. Offer your opinion as the beginning of the journey of discussion instead of the end. Adopt an attitude of curiosity instead of certainty. Also, a great many criticisms are in fact dripping with projection. For this reason, I want you to watch my video on YouTube titled Projection, the Psychology of Projecting. Sharing a perspective can be the thing that imprisons someone or the thing that sets them free. It can also be the thing that imprisons us or sets us free. And it is not an exact science. Remain open to questioning whether or not it is really in alignment for you to share the perspective which you're wishing to share. And be aware that the reactivity that spirals us into a space of criticism is always the byproduct of trauma that we have suffered. It is indicative of the pain we have experienced and of the hurt. If we address that pain and that hurt directly, we will watch our reactivity decrease, and thus we will become less critical. And as a result, people will not only be willing to hear our perspective, they will seek us out specifically to hear it. Have a good week.